Sugar seems to be everywhere all the time, especially if you're listening to this right now. It is the holidays and there are cookies everywhere. There are pies everywhere. There is every type of imaginable candy available at your fingertips. And if you feel addicted to sugar, I know that holidays don't feel like the only challenge. It can be a year-round battle where no matter how much food you seem to eat at meals, you always crave something sweet after. Or once you start with one sweet thing, you feel like this monster has awakened within you and you just keep eating. You feel so out of control around sugar and you're not sure how to stop. I used to feel the exact same way around sugar too. I felt like I was a sugar addict, that this is the one thing that was just causing me to overeat and to binge. And I even went sugar-free for an entire month at one point where I cut out all processed sugar. Now, what's interesting is even though I did that, I was still binge eating because there are other factors involved in your relationship with food besides just a singular food itself. Believe it or not, I know, so crazy. But sugar is a substance that we want to talk about today and learn why we feel so obsessed about it from this science-backed lens of what's actually going on in our brain psychologically and in our body biologically. I want you to know that even if you feel crazy around sugar right now, it doesn't have to be that way forever. I'll start by reading a win from my client, Rachel, so you can see what's possible for you too. So this week we were talking on our call and she went to Target. Normally she would scroll through the candy aisle, she would pick out some chocolate, she would get a little something while she's there. But this week, she was able to effortlessly pass by all of the bakery items, all of the candy, and not want any of them. She honestly forgot to even check. She also still has Halloween candy around in her house. I'm recording this, it's December 9th, and yes, she still has Halloween candy around. She doesn't have kids either, so this was not even that much, but she just doesn't have the desire to eat it anymore. She told me this week that she's probably going to throw it away because there's just no point of it anymore. She doesn't want to have it around. She doesn't really care to eat it. Not from a place of fear or scarcity, but just from a place of genuine undesire. And finally, this week too, her and her partner had their anniversary dinner and he wanted to go get ice cream after. And she was like, you know what, we can do that, but I honestly don't want any ice cream. She didn't feel restricted. She didn't feel deprived. It was an empowered choice because we have changed her mindset around these foods. So I'm going to teach you how to do that today too, of how we can start to shift your thoughts and understand on a deeper level where this addiction around sugar comes from and where these feelings of obsession and out of control stem from at their root. So in order to understand why you feel so crazy around sugar, we need to talk about what sugar is in the first place. When I'm talking about sugar, I'm talking about processed white sugar. There are a lot of foods that have sugar in it. Fruits have sugar, vegetables have sugar, honey has sugar, maple syrup has sugar. There's lots of sugars that exist naturally in nature. Sugar itself is not the problem. Our bodies thrive on having carbs and sugar in the right amounts that nature gives them to us. But what's become a problem is that sugar has become an isolated molecule, and that's what we're talking about today. The molecule of sucrose. Sucrose is something that does exist in nature, but it exists within a complex food. It has a lot of other nutrients in it, a lot of other chemicals in it within something like fruit. But what we mean when we're talking about processed white sugar is it is just sucrose alone. It has nothing else in it except sucrose. And that is the problem with it. Because it is an isolated molecule, your body cannot accurately regulate it. It's similar to something like alcohol or drugs, where these things might exist somewhere in nature, like in their natural form, but then we do all of these complicated chemical processes to isolate the compound, and then it becomes artificial where our bodies cannot moderate and manage it as much. Our bodies want to moderate sugar. It does. It is not biologically favorable to just eat and eat and eat sugar all day long. That would cause weight gain. That would cause a lot of blood sugar issues. So our body does have the innate ability to feel satisfied with sugar, but only when it's in its natural form. So what happens when we have something that like just pure white sugar with flavorings? I'll give the example of soda, for example, because I think that's the easiest way to understand this. And a lot of people really struggle with soda. Most people would not find a lot of enjoyment from drinking sugar water. Like if I just gave you a glass glass of water with sugar mixed in. You might like have like a sip of it, but it'd probably be pretty gross, right? But soda is flavored sugar water. The flavorings in our food give our brain a prediction about what nutrition is coming in. Soda is a combination of thousands of different flavorings, oftentimes from very exotic locations, all paired together or artificially created in order to trick our brain into thinking we're getting something really nutritious when we're not. Think about if you were to go into nature and you were to be handed a very bitter, unripe apple versus a sweet, ripe apple, which one would you want to choose? Well, the sweet, ripe apple. And that's not just because we get pleasure from it. We get pleasure from it because our brain predicts that nutrition is going to come in. And it's true that the sweeter tasting apple does have a higher dose of nutrition than the unripe apple, so that's why we want to have it. Pleasure is not just something that randomly happens in our brain just because, for the fun of it. Nothing happens in the survival game just for the fun of it. We got to remember at the end of the day, all we are is animals. That's all you and I are, is animals trying to win this game of survival. So if we feel pleasure for something, it is because our brain is perceiving it as something that is beneficial for our survival. Sometimes our brain gets it wrong though, not because our brain is stupid or broken, but because there are tricks in the industry and by other humans who want for their own survival gain of getting more money from you. They will trick you in your brain, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously, into eating more things, into drinking more alcohol, because they know how our brain works. So they know that flavorings in our food and sugar in our food lead to us wanting more because our brain is thinking something is more nutritious. So when you eat something like apple pie, that feels pleasurable and hard to stop because you are normal and your brain is perceiving that you might be getting a high dose of nutrition, but it's just artificially concentrated sugar that would not exist in nature normally. So your taste buds are saying, ooh, jackpot, nutrients are incoming, but really nothing arrives. Sugar itself of sucrose, does it have carbohydrates in it? Sure, that can give us a little bit of energy, but there's no nutritional value of sucrose, zero. Any nutritional value that would come from it, such as sugar and energy from it, we could get from a whole food source. We don't need to have sugar. Sugar is a substance. So when you eat processed sugar, it's almost like going on a bad Hinge date where it overpromises and underdelivers. Your brain thinks you're getting a lot more nutrition than actually arrives. So when you take that first bite, that sends a signal to your survival brain that says nutrients are incoming, but when those nutrients don't arrive, your brain nudges you to try again and continue eating more. This also leads to something called intermittent reinforcement. Now, I have a full episode on intermittent reinforcement, episode 88, so I'd highly recommend going to listen to that to help you understand this deeper if you haven't already after you listen to this. But the basics of intermittent reinforcement is where sometimes you get the reward and sometimes you don't. We understand this pretty well during gambling. Sometimes you pull the slot machine and you get money and sometimes you don't. So your brain hyper focuses on that situation to try to figure out which one it's gonna be. So when sometimes you taste sugar, like in an apple, and it tastes sweet and it does have nutrition, but sometimes you taste an apple in an apple pie and it has some nutrition but not as much as predicted, that leads your brain to hyper focusing on the situation and saying, something is going wrong here and I better try to figure it out by thinking about it 24/7 and trying to eat as much as possible of it to see if I actually get that predicted reward. Then the more you start eating processed white sugar, the more your taste buds start to recalibrate and literally change to make things taste sweet. Because think about it, if you had that strawberry flavored gummy bear, your brain thought, wow, I must be getting like 100 units of strawberry nutrition in right now, but then no strawberries actually arrived in your body. Your brain is going to say, well, wait a second, let's change something here. Let's make it so we don't get as much pleasure out of that first hit of sugar, and we're going to need more and more sugar to get that same pleasure hit because we think that getting more might give us that nutrition that we're wanting, that sugary food is promising to us but actually never delivers. So you keep craving more sugar because literally sweetness does not taste as strong to you anymore. I did an experiment a couple months ago where I started to eliminate sugar from my life and avoid it. This is not something you have to do, okay? I want to make that disclaimer. But it has honestly made my life a million times better in so many different ways. And I have a couple episodes on that if you scroll back a bit too. But what I noticed was I ate a red pepper one day and the red pepper literally tasted like candy to me. It was so sweet. Like it tasted like a dessert. And I have never had that experience before. I enjoy red peppers and they do have like a naturally sweet taste to them, but I noticed how quickly my taste buds started to recalibrate and how much I was satisfied with something like a vegetable. You might have heard before, like, oh, if you're craving something sweet, just have fruit. But fruit is not going to taste as good to you if you are still continuing to eat large amounts of processed white sugar. It's just not. But when we learn how to remove our desire, so we don't even want processed white sugar anymore, then everything becomes so much more satisfying. You will leave a meal with having a sweet potato and feel like you don't want any more sweet things because that satisfied you. Or eating a red pepper. Or when I do have fruit, it tastes really sweet to me and like candy, especially dates. I love having dried dates if I'm wanting something sweet or a little bit of a dessert. Dates to me now, I can only have a couple of them before they start to taste too sweet because I've recalibrated my taste buds and my sweetness levels have gone back down to baseline where they're supposed to be. This explains why your cravings might feel bigger now than they were years ago. You might imagine a time when you were a child and you're like, I just felt like I could have a little bit of ice cream, a little bit of candy and feel satisfied and moved on. That's because your taste buds haven't recalibrated to the level that they have now. Because again, the more we eat of these foods, the more our taste bud receptors will become down regulated so they don't taste as good. There's a lot else we could talk about with that I'm going to talk about in a minute too, about why can some people have these foods in moderation. Okay, and the last thing we want to cover is your mindset around these foods. This is where everyone gets stuck. This is why you haven't made progress. This is why you're still listening to this podcast after listening to my podcast for a year or trying to work on your relationship with food for the past 10 years. It's because you have not done the inner mindset work that is necessary for long-term permanent change. You can have all of the information in the world, but until you work with someone on your mindset, you are not addressing the root cause and doing the things that will make your success around food last for life. And I said working with someone because I truly do believe that you need to work with someone on your mindset. I have therapists, dietitians, and even other eating coaches reaching out all the time to do my program. I even had someone reach out just this morning over email. They feel so much shame about it because I think they should all know how to do it. But the truth is, it's just hard to see inside of our own brain. Our brain is biased. It wants to be right about what it's thinking, even if what it's thinking is wrong. So that's why it's so important to work on your mindset with someone. And also, in my Confident Eater program, I am teaching you things that no one else in this industry is talking about. And if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you'll know that this information is pretty unique. And I'm constantly striving to be the best in my industry. I'm always doing more trainings for myself, honing my coaching skills so my clients get the best results with the most research-backed information. And we know that changing your thoughts is so important for changing your long-term actions. So the mindset that most people get stuck into around sugar is a scarcity mindset, which I also sometimes call dieting mindset. Because a dieting mindset feels like someone else is giving you a rule that you have to follow and you don't want to follow. If it feels like avoiding sugar or cutting back on your sugar in any way feels like you're doing a diet, that's probably because you're getting into the scarcity dieting mindset. So a scarcity mindset sounds like, I can never have this again. I'm so restricted and deprived. I need to eat this all right now. Someone's going to take this away from me. I'll be good tomorrow. I'll be good Monday. I'll be good next year. All of those thoughts make you feel like there is this really special thing on this pedestal. And if I don't have it all right now, I'm never going to get it again. That's not the truth. Instead, I want you to be in an abundance mindset, which I also sometimes call a choice mindset, knowing that this is a choice you are making. No matter what I ever say, I want you always to do what you feel is best for you in this current moment, because that's what will work long term. So being in a choice mindset sounds like thinking, I choose to eat less sugar because that's what makes me feel my best. I am choosing to say no to the peppermint bark today because I know that once I start with it, I just keep wanting more and I just don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. I would rather sit with this urge and this craving to eat a little bit right now than start eating it and feel an even deeper urge and craving and just want to keep going. And being in an abundance mindset, kind of similar to the choice mindset, is reminding yourself that you could have this food again. Sugar is not going anywhere from the planet, okay? I promise you, manufacturers are going to continue to add sugar into literally everything, and there are going to be desserts literally everywhere. It's not going anywhere. If you want to have something, you can, but no one is forcing you to not have these things or to have these things on both sides. Another aspect of the mindset piece of eating less sugar is a lot of people create this desire story in their brain about how delicious sugar will be, how fun eating it is, how pleasurable it is, how amazing it is to have desserts when it is not really that way. The truth about processed white sugar is that it is draining your energy. It is making you crave more. It is making every single other food you eat for the rest of the day taste worse because you've now recalibrated your taste buds. And it is ruining your health in so many different ways. So saying no to sugar is something that can be fun. It can be fun because on the flip side, binging on sugar is what is making your life miserable right now. When someone becomes an alcoholic versus a casual drinker, the difference is the alcoholic starts believing the story that drinking is fun and it is helping them. It is the same thing around food. When people start to believe that processed foods are enjoyable and helping them, and that binge eating is something that is beneficial for their life in some way, that is the second you become an addict, and it makes it super hard to change. So what you need to do instead is starting to see the truth about this food and the truth about the binge eating behavior. Now, the big question that comes up along this that I know you're thinking is, well, why do I see my husband per se being able to have just a slice of cake and move on, and he doesn't look very addicted to it, but I do. I feel so addicted to it. The first thing I'll say to that is most people actually feel more obsessed and out of control around sugar than you might imagine. When I started telling one of my besties, Zareen, about this concept around sugar and processed foods, I remember it so clearly. We were in the car driving around Joshua Tree, and she was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense to me. She is someone who is naturally thin, has never struggled with weight in her life. She's always trying to gain weight, actually. And she said, I don't like to eat processed foods and snack foods. Like, I just don't buy them because it weirds me out how I always crave more after I start eating them. That when I went over to a friend's house once and I had an Oreo, I just kept wanting more. And it just made me super confused on why I was eating food, but my body wasn't feeling satisfied by it. So even natural eaters, even if they can eat things in moderation, that doesn't mean they don't have some sort of mental battle going on internally of still going back and forth. And you can see this happening sometimes within people. Like, I love watching natural eaters when there's sometimes like, oh, I feel like I want another piece, but I don't know. Or they ended the meal and they're like, oh, actually, that was a bit too much cake. Like, I don't feel too good right now. And they say, oh, that was so good. I just need a little bit more. You can watch natural eaters and see how they have the same experience of desire too for these foods. Maybe it doesn't feel like the degree that you're having it, but for most people, there is actually some internal battle going on with sugar because their brain is doing the same thing that your brain is doing, where it's perceiving, ooh, this is a large dose of nutrition coming in, when it's not. The second reason that you might feel addicted to sugar while other people don't is you come from a background of dieting and hunger. Dieting primes our brain to have more fear around food because to your survival brain, a diet meant that food must be disappearing off the face of the planet Earth. And so it is a little bit more sensitive now to possible food restrictions. Okay, it might freak out a little bit more. It might give you a little more anxiety. So sometimes saying no around sugar can make you feel a little bit more urgy than most people because your brain doesn't feel safe to say no to it yet. If you also have a background of being overly hungry, or you are still continuing to restrict your food in either calories or nutrients and you are overly hungry throughout the day, that is going to prime your brain to eat more sugar. Because sugar is a quick source of energy and calories for your body. And if you are low on energy and calories for your body, it is going to go to the first place it can because it's trying to help you survive. Okay. Again, your brain is never trying to self-sabotage you. I don't actually believe that self-sabotage is like a truly real thing because our brain is always trying to help us in some way. Always. Sometimes falsely slow, sometimes falsely so, but it is always trying to help us. So if you are continuing to eat really low calorie or cutting out lots of food or trying to be extra hungry throughout the day, it is going to feel pretty impossible to stop eating sugar. And that is not something any mindset trick can give you, okay? I can try to take you through my hypnosis exercises. We can do lots and lots of coaching, but unless you're eating enough, it's not gonna really work. So it's always the first step that I work with clients on is making yourself feel safe eating more food, because I get it. It feels scary eating more food and stopping restricting because you feel like you're gonna gain weight and you don't wanna gain weight. I don't want you to gain weight either if you don't have to. But our brain is usually perceiving that calorie restriction is helping us lose weight. But if you are in a binge restrict cycle, and even if you're good with your calorie counts and your portions all week long, if you're having a 3,000 calorie binge at the end of the week, it's not helping you lose weight. It's helping you gain weight. So we need to fix that first so you actually can be in weight loss mode because your brain feels safe since it has enough food. This can also happen if food was just scarce for you growing up. So if you lived in a household where there truly wasn't enough food, or you were always fighting to get enough, that also primes your brain to overindulge a bit now. And that's something that can still change. Again, if we can create safety with your brain and show it how there is enough food today. There is literally a grocery store on every single corner. There are restaurants on every single corner. There are gas stations everywhere that you can get food at if you need it, and you are a grown adult who has money for food now. Hopefully, I'm guessing if you're listening to this podcast, if you're not, that's another conversation. But if you can have your basic needs met by food, then we can learn to create safety around it. And the final reason why other people seem to eat sugar in moderation or not obsess over it, and you do, is because remember, the more you eat of it, the more your brain thinks it needs it. When others have never binged on sugar in large amounts and have only occasionally overeaten them, their associations with sugar, both psychologically and biologically, are much weaker. So that makes it easier for them to eat it. Now, in my Confident Eater program, I teach you how to retrain your brain to crave the real foods and decrease desire for fake foods like sugar. This is not a diet. This is not a meal plan. This is something that is empowering you to take charge of your health and well-being again. And does this mean you have to cut out all processed sugar forever? No, not necessarily. I do teach an empowered avoidance approach that feels fun and effortless because you start to genuinely not even want sugar ever again. So the way I teach you this is the easiest, fastest, and most permanent way to never binge eat again and regain your health, energy, vitality, and life. But if that's not the approach you want to take, we have so many options of ways I help you change your mindset around sugar so you can also learn to moderate it and stop feeling so crazy around it. I want you to leave today knowing that feeling addicted to sugar does not mean that something is wrong with you. I'm going to say that again. Feeling addicted to sugar does not mean something is wrong with you. It is a very predictable, very normal thing when you look at the science behind it of how sugar deceives you and lies to you. That happens to any person, and there is a simple way out of it. Brains are designed to both learn and unlearn, so we can unlearn this habit from your brain. Who you are today does not have to be who you are forever. You can change.